In the summer of 1972, I beat a man and left him pinstripe shirt bloodied and eyes swollen to purple slits on a bank of the muddy river. He was a man I had met in a bar and he'd given me a blowjob. I had never laid hands on anyone before that evening or since. Years later, teaching English in the same urban university where I completed my graduate and postgraduate degrees, I read the roll call for the first meeting of a composition class. The man I had left for near dead beside the muddy river sat at the far end of the folding table. He made a striking figure with his shiny hair pomaded and his crisp pinstripe shirt. He was tall, and though he appeared to be my age, in his late 50s, he had the slouching posture of a young man. I don't know if he recognized me then. When I called his name, Oliver Neal, he raised his hand and dangled a yellow handkerchief at me as if he were waving a tiny dinner bell. I extend the same invitation to my students as I do to my colleagues in comparative literature, that is to call me by my first name, George. Our department chair, Sandra Lockwood, a small, unassuming woman with blonde streaks in her hair and raisin-like eyes, asked me for more formality. I disagree. In order to command respect, after all, one must bestow it. Now, I consider myself neither overly masculine nor blithe and effeminate. I wear black shoes with black belts and own stylish, unusual ties that I wear to department gatherings or late summer evenings at the symphony. I'm single. I like a full-bodied Cabernet or Shiraz with my dinner, a vintage port following dessert. And each January, in the month-long holiday between terms, I retire to the same vineyard north of San Francisco to escape the brutality of the New England winter. Oliver Neal, on the other hand, was nothing less than flamboyant. Flamboyant in the manner of crisp, complete with witticisms and caustic remarks. One morning I recall that he appeared in class dressed in a tangerine shirt with petal-like frills at the end of the sleeves. It was a fight ugliness morning, he announced to the class, who en masse chuckled. And in a strange way I found this flamboyance a comfort, because despite my years of teaching, I retained a certain nervousness when speaking to students. I'd sit in my office before class and jot down notes on lined cards. Take attendance, tell joke. Oliver, in his carefree way, provided a contrast. If I faltered or said things that seemed inane, I would never be as ridiculous as this man. The first assignment I gave the class was to write 2 pages about the most frightening event that had occurred to them. It was the same exercise I assigned at the beginning of each term. I found it useful in assessing skills. As a windy rain clinked the flag pins of the pole outside our classroom, the usual parade of 18-year-old woes were read aloud. The loss of a sporting event, mutilated romance, the sudden death of a grandparent. Oliver had titled his essay, "The Irreparable Loss of Mr. Cat." How to be gentle about a dead cat. I placed my bifocals on my forehead and praised the detail of Mr. Cat's sleeping bag, its connotations of warmth and intimacy. I talked about the compassion in the essay, how Oliver made the detritus of his tragedy compelling, how he evoked loss without idling in love. Then I commented on the need for organization, several dead metaphors, and a page of description that might be cut. After I dismissed the class, Oliver remained. He sat with his head erect and hands clasped atop his leather notebook. I was the first to speak. "You're a returning student, Oliver?" This term I learned from Sandra. It was a polite way of referring to an older student, the middle-aged housewife or one of a dozen senior citizens in the department's Evergreen program. Oliver smiled. His tan face seemed to breathe in the sunlight that had displaced the rainstorm and now cast the room in a bland yellow haze. "I wrote another essay," Oliver said, "the most frightening event that ever happened to me. It was the night I was nearly beaten to death." He stared at me across the table. I gathered my notes and neatened them like a deck of cards. Was he playing games? Did he recognize me? The morning after I deserted him on the muddy river, I remember clipping an article from the Globe about the incident and carefully stowing it in a desk drawer. When I discovered it later, I stuffed it in my pocket and brought it home, shredding it with a leftover cassoulet in the garbage disposal. Outside my classroom, a young man blared on a bullhorn. The day had brightened considerably, and I encouraged Oliver to bring his essay to a future class. Speaking with the breezy, non-committal tone of a teacher, granted, a part of me was intrigued by his account of that night. The young man with the bullhorn extolled the virtues of his fraternity to the entire quad. Oliver stood, his chair scraped the tile floor. With one hand, he carefully smoothed a lock of white hair that had fallen across his cheek. As he closed the door of the classroom, I swore that he winked at me. It seemed as intimate and as flagrant as the handkerchief that he always held in one hand.